Welcome everybody out to podcast number 461. We're here with Brandon Montero again today, and we are going to record the fifth section of our drafting of Elevating Construction Surveyor. Stay with us.
This is the Elevate Construction Podcast, delivering remarkable content for workers, leaders, and companies in construction wanting to take their next step. Get ready to step out of your comfort zone with Jason Schroeder as he encourages you to do better, live a remarkable life, and expect more. Let's go.
Welcome everybody. I really hope you're doing well. Brandon, do you want to say hi to everybody?
Good morning.
I love it. So we are going to get kicked off on this 461 episode. We're going to do another 10 segments and not get tired because Mr. Montero does not get tired. That's just not how life works with him and his reality. So we're just going to get going. So topic number one. Well, real quick, let's do some connection. How are you doing, Mr. Montero? Anything you want to update?
I'm doing real good. From an update standpoint, looking forward to a little time off surrounding the holidays, not so that I can relax, but so that I can do all of the other 100 things floating around in my brain. I think I'm not a person that ever stops activity.
Yep.
At least from the standpoint of movement. So just looking forward to that time to chip away at other little projects and things that I've got going on that are fun for me.
I love it. Okay, well, we'll go ahead and get started. So number one, focus on aesthetics. As an owner choosing a builder, who do you think you would select? Someone who showed up with a raggedy plan set, a stack of schedules and exhibits, unstapled, laying loose in any order, half-tucked coffee-stained shirt, or the organized, orderly, and clearly communicated plan and presentation by the next builder. Aesthetic presentation isn't knowledge, that's true. You would hope the owner will choose the builder with the most knowledge or experience, right? But what else is being communicated to the owner through aesthetics? This person will communicate clearly in the future. This person is aware of how he interacts with others, how they view him, and how he cares about those perceptions. He will care how the public perceives his job site. His job site will be clean and organized. This person is a professional, and he delivers a professional project. Is that how our product causes us to be viewed? From things as simple as the arrangement of leaders and consistently sized texts, the removal of clutter and irrelevant layers and lines from our exhibits, to the arrangement of tools in our vehicle, to the last time our vest was washed. The care we put into our appearance, even when that appearance is ready to work its hardest in the sweat and dirt of a fast-paced job site, aesthetics matter. And so just like we always do, story, quote, application, and challenges, take it away.
A story that I have, I used to work with someone that came from a company where in the chainman position, it was his responsibility to, after any line was staked out, any run of utilities or curb, he was supposed to stand at the end and take his plumb bob out and hold it out in front of him and make sure that all of the stakes were in the same line and were plumb. That company wanted their product to look like it was set perfectly, that it was set uniformly, that it was set plumbly. They didn't want stakes that were leaning forward or back, or stakes that were set, or rather lath that were set further away from the point set in the ground. It was really important to them that they left with an aesthetic presentation, so that people would look at their work and have the idea that it was well done, even before they reviewed its quality or accuracy.
Wow, I love that.
I would say, going back to the concept of aesthetics isn't everything. It doesn't tell someone that the work is correct, but it looks like it tells someone that the work is correct. It looks like you've put care into the product that you're delivering. And that goes a really long way. In addition to that, from an aesthetic standpoint, it makes your work something that's clear and easy to understand. Usually what creates aesthetics is arrangement of things in a way so that they are pleasing to the eye, easy to be viewed. You don't look at something and immediately think, this is cluttered, I'm confused, I don't understand what's going on. You look at it and visually there's a flow. All of the leaders are pulled to one side and stacked in a row vertically, or there are no leaders crossing other lines where you can't tell what's a leader and what's a line. There's just thought that goes into, is this as clear as it could be for the person who's going to view it? And that's ultimately what aesthetics are.
And what would our quote be for this? Aesthetics matter is probably a pretty good one.
Yeah, I would say that's a great one. That's really the whole point. Aesthetics do matter. It's that they're not just the look of things. They're the ease of communication of your product at the end of the day.
I love that. Next one. Interpreting work orders. Work orders aren't always generated by another surveyor, with knowledge of your methods or equipment capabilities. Sometimes trade partners will communicate needs to a project team who reaches out to the surveyor, and important details fall by the wayside. Perhaps the task comes directly from the landscape architect or civil engineer. Never accept the items on the work order at face value. Ask yourself, do I fully understand the big picture? Do I know how my data will be used, and do I understand the task tolerance? Method of approach, level of effort, and your end product can be wildly affected by these variables. Ask additional questions. Explain your process so that your methods can be envisioned by others and they can weigh in if necessary. This type of regular communication ensures that each subsequent work order will be more tailored to delivering well-rounded understanding.
Let's see. I don't know that I have a story about this one, other than going back to that concept of the person for whom the work will be delivered, or I guess the person utilizing your work is your client. And to continue holding that thought at the forefront of your mind when you're planning. And the reason that I would say that is just like you as a surveyor are going to go out and I'm going to air quote the word survey stuff. That means a lot more than just those words, right? You're going to have a certain process, an approach, a plan of attack. You have best practices, you have QC that you're going to do. And all of that could be explained to someone so that they could really understand not only what are you doing, but what you need to get done, what you have to do. And it's the same way when we receive a work order. Is all of the information really there to understand this task? Do we know how the person is going to do it, what their approach is going to be to process or utilize our work? And if we knew that, would we include additional information or additional data? Are there questions that we would ask that person that could shed a lot more light on what we might need to do, or what would be the most helpful in the way that we perform our work? Again, I say, never accept the items on a work order at face value. And that's probably my quote statement as well. There's so much more to be learned that would set you up for success if you ask additional questions, get the details, and those details and questions should be directed to the person that will be utilizing your work.
I think
The challenge, do you know who's receiving this work? We get work orders from our survey manager half the time, or from a crew lead. But do we know who is receiving this work? Do we know the details of how they'll process our work? Those are things we need to find out. And I would challenge you to familiarize yourself with the people who are receiving your work, not just the person that's handing you your work order.
Wow, that's a great section. Communicating on site. Normalizing effective communication and feedback for improvement is one of the best ways to achieve, best ways to be effective and successful in work and in life. Some like to get in, head down, do their task per the work order, and get out. Often, the fear is that some aspect of the work will change and their day won't go exactly as planned. But remember, this is your client. Satisfying your client's needs is your true task, regardless of what's written on the work order. When we get to the site, we want to speak to the project superintendent or designated task lead and the trade partner who has requested the task. If something is different from the work order in cost or time necessary, have a conversation about cost and priority. How can we bill this most effectively? Or how can we fill the most of their needs in the allotted time or budget? When we're done and before we pack up, we should have them review it. Ask if everything necessary is there. Ask if it can be clearly understood. If you know that paint or stakes will be hard to maintain, a follow-up staking exhibit preserves your communication. Ask what can be done better. Get to know your trade partners and project teams so that they feel your support. When we earn the trust of a client, we earn their business and their respect as professionals. That was pretty powerful.
Yeah, I'm really, from a podcast standpoint, I'm really proud of this paragraph, everybody.
Yeah.
This is not something that happens often on our job sites. And going back to that concept of a lot of surveyors move into a project, head down, do their task, and want to get out. It's because they don't feel that they're capable or empowered to talk about changes in scope and budget. And so they're afraid to have those conversations and will shy away from them in the form of doing their work and getting out of there. They don't want things to change, from the stated work order because they have a plan or expectation of time, and they don't want that cart to be disrupted. So it makes it difficult to have those conversations. However, again, we have to remember we have a client and we're serving our client ultimately. We're not just checking the box of fulfilling a work order. From a conceptual standpoint, we have to please this client with a job well done that is easy to understand, that can then be used to clearly and efficiently construct a product. So let's see. Yeah, this the communicate. What was that?
Yeah, communicating on site. Yes. And so the quote there that I put is, when we earn the trust of a client, we earn their business and their respect as professionals.
Yeah, and I would just add.
I'm so sorry. So have you ever had a situation where you've seen this done badly or done well?
Yeah, from the prospect of managing crews, a crew leaves and then the superintendent is calling the office saying, "Hey, this isn't done," or "Hey, I needed something else," or "I needed additional data." Or the trade partner that the work was performed for is calling you and saying, "I don't understand this stake. I don't understand that stake." Or I can think of some examples of like staking curb, and the curb had little curb cuts where water was supposed to flow through the parking lot. And they took the center line of a curb cut stake to represent one edge of the curb cut, and then they were like, "Well, where's the other edge?" And so they poured in place curb up to the wrong spot. Just little things like that, where if you had communicated and maybe done a quick job walk with the person that was using your work, you could have that conversation. What does this stake mean? What does this acronym mean that you guys are using? What did you grade to? That way, everyone is on the same page. Yes, those things take a few extra minutes from a time standpoint, but they ensure that what you meant is interpreted by the people utilizing the work. So it's such a necessary part. And then going back to the concept of exhibits, a lot of time the communication that you spent all day on, writing up these stakes or painting on the ground can't last or won't last. And so those exhibits can really serve the purpose of preserving that communication even when your stakes and paint go away.
Very nice. That was well done. I think we also have the application and challenge in here. So I think we're doing really well. So I think we're ready for be personally organized. Let's do this introduction. If this sounds go ahead.
I'm adding a challenge.
Go ahead.
Check in, check out on the job site, walk the site with the person receiving your work.
I love that. Okay, be personally organized. If this sounds difficult to you, understand that getting started is often the hardest part. Once a personal organization system is in place or is being practiced with repetition, it becomes easier and easier to maintain. But where to start? The little things. Have a morning routine. Get out of bed. Get prepared. Review the day and center yourself. Often this is more an exercise in having clear intentions than it is effort. Organize your day, keep a schedule, and stick to it. Plan buffer time so that if your schedule gets momentarily derailed by an emergency, it's possible to recover. Take note of the things that throw you off schedule most often and better plan for them in your schedule. Keep your vehicle and tools organized, your desk space, your computer desktop, so that you can work efficiently in an environment that's ready for you to be effective. And so, real quick before we start, have you seen this done poorly or done well? Or is there a reflection or a metaphor here?
This is a really small thing, but I remember the first company that I worked for when I was doing my summer internship with a surveying company. It was a civil engineer in the Seattle area. We had work vans, and each of the vans had a little trash can where you could just, throw your trash, the hubs that broke, food. And I remember rolling up to a job site with my crew. There was a particular party chief that I was working for that was not organized in any way, shape, or form conceivable in the universe. And as we got to the site, the superintendent came to walk up to the van, and the party chief got out, and then he went to open the sliding door to get his plan set. And his trash can was situated by design right next to the door, and it tipped over, and all the trash spilled out as he opened up the door to the van while the superintendent's walking up. And I remember the look on the superintendent's face of like, who are these knuckleheads that just got to my job site? And it was a really small thing, but it just had to do with like, do you appear organized? Have you, is there thought that goes into the different things that make you organized, even from a vehicle standpoint? Yeah. Do you have trash to move out of the way every time you want your hammer or to put your belt on? So many of those things matter and measure up in the way that we spend time throughout the day. So, in this section, just going back to the concept of what are your intentions for the day? How do you intend for it to go? And what are you doing physically from a task standpoint, from an order standpoint, or from a taking time to organize objects standpoint to make sure that things flow the way that your intention dictates, versus your day is just affected by all of the outlying circumstances on the outside. I got this email and derailed. I got this phone call and derailed. They added a task and derailed. I would go back to the concept of having some buffer time in there so that once those little things come up, or if those little things come up, because they will and they do, there is some response time that's built in there so that you can get yourself back on track as soon as possible, versus having a day ruined by, a 5-minute detour in concept or intention.
So that's a great story. I think the quote is organize your day, keep a schedule, and stick to it. Unless we come up with a better one, we have plenty of time for that. What would be your, I think you've already done a little bit of application. Do you have any application and challenge?
From a challenge standpoint, ask yourself, what is your personal organization system? Could you say that you have one, or that you just, do things throughout the day that you're told to do when you're told to do them? Or do you have a system that you actually refer to and look at? This is what's next. This is how much time I've, allotted to this particular task. And you can even personally organize your time away from work, at home, with family, how long you spend, working on hobbies, playing with kids. All of those things can be part of your personal organization.
That's great. All right, the next one ties right into it. Plan your work. This is where best practice, clear communication, aesthetics, flow, and organization all come together. Each previously discussed concept needs to be a part of the way you plan your work. It takes time and effort to create and deliver a truly comprehensive product. If we haven't planned time to be thorough, we won't be. If we haven't made it our goal to only utilize best practices, we'll choose the easiest instead. If we haven't decided that our real work order is based on an in-person conversation, we won't take the time to have it or to ask additional questions. If we care more about budget than effectiveness, we'll never learn how to merge the two. All these steps are part of the planning process, or rather a part of the process of becoming a true professional. And so I'll ask you a question. Have you ever had a time where you've seen the professionals or yourself, or a time when you didn't plan your work and bring all those together and what happened, or a time where you did and it was just that perfect storm?
I want to say from a training concept, presently, oftentimes, let's say I'm going to train a field engineer on the principles of grid line layout.
Okay.
Nothing sets us up for success and flow like going over exactly what the work will entail, going over the process, drawing a sketch of what we're about to do, showing him on the data collector how we're about to do it, and reviewing a note-taking style. Everything that needs to happen is fresh in the mind of that person. They know the plan. They know what the plan's going to look like, what it'll sound like, feel like, all of those things. And so it's so much easier for the plan to come together in the end versus wondering at all times, what's my next step? What's my next step? What should I do next? But rather the work is planned.
That's great.
I would go as far as just restating that in that paragraph, it says each previously discussed concept needs to be a part of the way you plan your work. So is communication part of your plan? What's your plan to communicate? Is aesthetics part of your plan? How are you planning to make this a really great aesthetic product? What are the things that you're going to do to make sure that happens? Flow. Are you talking about flow? Are you talking about whose task is which task in the way that you plan the day to make sure that you actually have flow? So those things don't just happen. They all need to be an independent part of the conversation as you put together your plan of work for the day.
That's awesome. I put in there as the quote, if we haven't planned time to be thorough, we won't be. I kind of feel like your writing style is evolving to where the quote's already hidden in the paragraph. Well, yeah. So what would be a closing application and challenge for this section? This is a good one. I really quick while you're thinking about that, when you talk about flow and when you talk about the preparation and when you talk about communication, these are the things that bring this back to lean. That's why it's called lean sizzling. And so I really, really like this, that we're merging these worlds. And so anyway, sorry to derail you. What's your application or challenge if you have one?
It would be, I don't know if we could even create a system of checkbox for this one, but do you have a plan for best practice, communication, aesthetics, flow, and organization? Have you reviewed your plan? Have you vocalized your plan? That would be my challenge, to just make sure that those things are either write down or vocalize your plan so that everyone understands it and knows how to move forward.
Okay, so that was fantastic. I love that. That ties into building construction and listening to that ties in really well. So I love that. Sorry, I got a little distracted there. All right. Listening to the site, future needs. Introduction. In addition to one-on-one conversations about future needs, we should be the eyes and ears of the project team while we're on site. Perhaps we could take note of what needs to be moved to support an upcoming task. Maybe we see areas where the site fill hasn't been cut close enough to grade for the one set of stakes planned. We may have a great plan to control grid lines from outside the building, but what about when it goes vertical? Observing items which might be difficult or confusing to stake in the plan set could start a conversation about how they will be calced or what kind of exhibit should support the work. No matter our role, we want to have our eyes open and our minds turned on and active, observing the site and brainstorming on future needs. Compare progress to the plan set. Is it all there? The future is written if you know where to look. Our constant attention to future needs can not only allow us to get a jump on preparing work, but it can also spark conversations that help us prepare the site, ask intelligent questions about cost, and envision future obstacles so they can be removed before they have a chance to affect progress. I think this is another home run, quite frankly. So let me ask you a question. When have you seen this? It's probably better to do this for a positive reflection, but if you have a negative one where it didn't work, that's fine. But where have you seen this applied in a story, a metaphor, or a reflection?
I would just give the metaphor of watching someone walking towards an open trench and thinking to yourself, I see the trajectory of this person walking. I see that their eyes are attentive somewhere else other than this trench. And so I know what's going to happen. And I can either watch it happen or I can intervene and alert someone of what the future looks like. Alternatively, you could just not be paying attention to the people around you. They'd just be walking into trenches, left and right with no feedback from you.
Yeah.
I would say I've seen it on projects plenty of times where, let's say there's been a big rain and it has heavy equipment has rolled through an area and it's no longer rough graded and ready for staking. But you're called out to stake that area. Does the project team know? You could go out there and see, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to set all of these stakes. The guy that's coming to pour the curb is going to say, I can't pour curb here. The ground's not ready. They're going to re-rough grade it. They're only going to use a few of the stakes that you set, and they're going to call you out to restake in the future. Is that what the project team wants? Do you know better what they want and what their trajectory is? And so you can say, if there's an obstacle to your trajectory, because I'm thinking about what that is, talk to the project team and say, hey, this area is, it's not ready from a grading standpoint. Let me do some rough staking, and then you can come in there and grade it. And the overlap from a cost standpoint will be minimal. Maybe there's some other things you can do on site to make the visit worthwhile that are, billable and within scope. So just having your eyes open and thinking about what's the trajectory of this project. Is this task going to turn out the way they plan? And if it's not, am I communicating those things back to the project team? It's always helpful. It's always our role to be helpful. It's always our role to facilitate the project, no matter what it is that we're doing on the project team. So if we have our eyes open and we're looking for those ways that we can create feedback or communicate site needs, we'll make ourselves more and more valuable part of the project team as a whole.
I wrote down the quote as, no matter our role, we want to have our eyes open and our minds turned on and active, observing the site and brainstorming on future needs.
I love it.
I also like the one that says, and I might just do a double here, we are always, did you say paid to be helpful or?
Well, it's our role. That's why it was our role. So whoever we think we are, whatever we think that we're there to do, part of our role is facilitating the project. So we should be looking for the additional ways that we can do that.
I love that.
Communication.
Okay, perfect. All right. So what is your application and challenge before we go to the next one?
I would just say from a challenge standpoint, make it your responsibility to create communication about future needs on the site. Or if you're somebody who is just beginning on this, take some time as you're planning your work to think about future needs and consider future needs. What kind of feedback are you getting from the site? Do you see that this task is going to go well? Do you see that it's going to have obstacles? And communicate that obstacles. So just like talking about, planning your work, each concept had to be a part of your plan. Take time to consider future needs of the project. And in creating that time, you'll create a system where you get that feedback from the project site. If you're not looking, you won't get the feedback.
I love that. Next section, ask, does that sound right? Look, does that look right? Introduction. The cut on the last stake was cut 0.51 to top curb. This stake is cut C 0.02. Does that sound right? Is there really a 0.5 foot difference shown in the plan set of grades? Would it create an issue if there was? Is there a feature with a 0.5 foot grade break I need to describe better on the lath? Does that look right? Is my rod height entered correctly? Did the existing ground change by 0.5 feet visually to support the change? When we calculate an offset and walk out to it, does it line up with other similar offsets? If not, was it supposed to? After we've staked a complicated feature, back up and look at your stakes from the viewpoint of the first-time observer. Does it make sense? Would it guide you to the right conclusion? Once again, there is no position on the crew in which the brain can coast through the day. The QC process never ends, and staying alert and attentive to how things look and sound as we're working is a primary component of that. So let me ask you a question. Is there a time when you didn't do this duck or gut check or where you did and you found something pretty obvious that you want to share with us in a way of a story, metaphor, or reflection?
Well, this particular cut to top of curb scenario happened to me last month while I was working with someone else that was learning to operate the equipment to do curb layout. They were running the data collector and robotic equipment, and I was pounding hubs and writing up the lath. And I encountered this situation where the ground was nice and flat, and then one stake was a cut of a 1/2 foot to top of curb, and the next stake was a cut of 200s. And I'm looking at this flat ground, and I'm thinking, what has changed 1/2 foot? If this ground is flat, is there a slope here? Like, what's going on? And reads me the description, and there's nothing in the description that supports this 1/2 foot difference. So that immediately to me was like, hey, what happened? Something looks wrong. Something sounds wrong. I don't understand the math of how this is possible, so I need to ask him. He had changed his rod height and just didn't update it in the data collector. And that's what created the lack of another 1/2 foot cut on the stake. And so I would just go back to the concept of having your brain turned on, looking around and thinking, what's happening right now? What is the math that's going on? As I'm up, you're thinking of the overlay of where this curb is going to be in the future as you're seeing the cuts that you're writing down on these stakes. Now, if something doesn't fit that mental picture of this nice flat curb running along this nice flat ground, something's wrong. Think about it. Why is it wrong? What happened? What are the factors that can contribute to this? That's something that we can have going in our minds at all times. When we encounter things like having the wrong prism constant, all of a sudden things checked, now they don't check, or we set this the first time we were out here, everything was great. The second time we're out here, nothing checks out, and it's all by the same degree. Like thinking, where might this math come from? Why do things suddenly look wrong or feel wrong? That again, that data is out there. All of the mistakes that could be made in the field are communicating themselves to you while you're in the field. But if you're not listening for that information, you will miss them and you will create mistakes.
I put in here as the quote, "The QC process never ends, and staying alert and attentive to how things look and sound as we're working is a primary component of that." I really like that. So do you have any closing thoughts on an application or challenge for us?
My challenge is it is the responsibility of, and I would just insert yourself into that spot, no matter who you are, to catch errors in the field before the data collector and before the post processor in the office. Those errors are evident in the way that you perform your work and the way that you write up stakes. You should be able to see them and think them from a math standpoint. So my challenge would be to look for those things, have your mind open, listen for those errors, and catch them before they're uncovered by someone else.
I love it. We've got 3 more before we head into episode 462. So let's do this. Do your mental checklists. Introduction. We've discussed planning your day, morning prep, and envisioning tasks. Just like everything else, this is your system of back checks. As you read through the work order, compare what you have read to your mental checklist. Is everything I need spelled out here? Once the vehicle is loaded for the day's tasks, run through that mental checklist. Is everything accounted for? What other needs could arise? As you work through each task, run through the flow checklist in your mind as you complete tasks. Run through your list of responsibilities and best practices. Run through your deliverable. Is anything missing? It's a good practice to always know where you are in the overall scheme of things and ask yourself, is this where I'm supposed to be? Am I missing anything? Surveying is a profession of awareness. We must give our mind metrics to measure against constantly to ensure nothing is slipping past our attention. So let me ask you a question. Is there a time where you've seen this not work or where you've done this and it's really caught you? What would be a story, reflection, or metaphor?
I think that the story that I would use is, and this is actually going to tie right into the challenge. Where does a mental checklist come from? You have to know what is required of you. You have to know what you're going to do. And that would even include what we've been talking about already. And you have to know what's needed by the person that you're doing it for. Your mental checklist is probably something that needs to appear physically on paper at least once. And then it's your mental checklist, right? You really know physically what it is that you're going to do. And then in the future, you can refer back to that list mentally. So I would say in this particular concept, like, have you considered the big picture? Do you know all of the tasks that will be part of that big picture? And what would the mental checklist for each of those tasks be? So I'm going to go right to the application and challenge. Have you written down the big picture, or write down the big picture and then break that up into individual checklists? Visualize those checklists with your eyes at least once, and then flesh out and build on your mental checklist as time goes on and as you begin checking those tasks off your list.
I think that's great. I put in here for a quote, We must give our mind metrics to measure against constantly to ensure nothing is slipping past our attention. And I think that ties well with your application and challenge. Let's go on to the next one. We have two more. Always consider cost. And I love this one. Introduction. Do consider cost. You must be aware of the budget. Ask to be made aware of expectations for budget, hours, or mobilizations. When additional tasks are added to your plate, find out before commencing how they will be budgeted. Will they be charged separate from your primary task? If they are to be bundled with your primary task, does the budget support that? When we become aware of requests that will generate costs that may not have been accounted for, we need to communicate that. When we're given support tasks outside of our scope or rework created by a lack of planning or site preparedness, our crew manager or project manager should be notified of these changes to our task load and given our estimate of the level of effort needed so that they can decide where the task can be billed, make a call on its overall necessity, or even look for ways to alleviate future lack of planning and preparedness by better coordinating with the project team. And so I would love to know if there was a time where this really hurt you or where it benefited you, a story, a metaphor, or a reflection.
Well, I'm going to take this at a slightly different direction, and just explain how throughout the course of my career, I've worked with companies that tracked cost in all kinds of different ways. And those ways didn't always reflect dollars to the people in the field. So some of the companies used mobilizations. Some of them dictated the amount of hours that you could spend on a task. Some of them don't communicate cost at all. They just, hey, go show up. This is where you're showing up today. This is where you're going to be. And so the surveyor might just think, oh, I'm just supposed to be here today. But everything has a cost that's associated with it. Everything has a bottom number or a top number that, of cost associated to this is now worth it or this is not worth it. And so it's always something that should be considered no matter what our understanding of the budget is. And what I mean by that is we all know what our scope is, or we all should be making sure that our scope has been communicated to us. And so when we recognize or identify that something outside of scope or something that's going to take additional level of effort or something that's been added to our plate has come up that adds to our understanding of cost, not necessarily the number. That's what I'm trying to specify here, but understanding from a cost standpoint in general, more just happened. And I need to communicate that to somebody. It's very common to just, well, I'd like to be helpful, so I'm going to do that task. And then down the road, someone comes back to you and says, why was this so expensive? Why did this day in which you were doing this easy task end up being, a 12-hour day? Instead of answering those questions later or down the road, or somebody saying, I didn't intend to spend this much money, all of those conversations are had beforehand. So in my application and challenge, I would say, have conversations with crew managers, project managers, and superintendents when the red flag of additional cost goes up in your mind. And when that moment is, but a lot of times we're just thinking, oh, well, they did tell me to do this, or I have the green light to do this task. Yes, but is everyone aware of the cost and the level of effort? Probably only you are. And so we want to make sure that those things are communicated.
And I put the quote down as you must be aware of budget. That seems pretty simple. If we come up with a better one, that's great. But we have one more, and that was a great last section. Lead the crew. Like the conductor of an orchestra, the crew lead is responsible for providing clear direction, dictating the timing of tasks, even setting the overall pace in which the crew performs. That means that your attention can no longer be centered around the success of your individual tasks alone. You must begin taking responsible charge of others. Viewing their skill set, production, and collaboration with the crew as a reflection of your leadership will help keep your team at the forefront of your attention and keep you looking for new ways and new opportunities to lead them to success. As the crew lead, you'll often be responsible for balancing training opportunities against overall efficiency. But remember, effective training creates efficiency. So I'd love a case study, reflection, a metaphor or story on this one, either good or bad, but let's go right into it. This is a good one.
I'm just going to go right back to the metaphor of the conductor leading the orchestra. If you've ever seen, even if it's in a movie or on public broadcasting system or something, someone leading an orchestra, the conductor's up there, he's holding his little stick, and his body movements have passion in them. Everything is ultra deliberate. If he wants a particular emotion to be depicted by the sound of the instruments, you can see that emotion on his body, even on his face. The conductor takes responsibility for everything happening, and he becomes what he wants to see happen. It is no different for a person leading a crew. If you want, haste and effectiveness, then you have to be haste and effectiveness in the way that you lead the crew. If you want clear communication to be how the crew acts and reacts, you have to be a clear communicator. If the pace is fast, your pace has to be fast. I really like the concept of, thinking of that conductor again. Everything that happens is about or the responsibility of that conductor. If he didn't point to the guy with the trombone or the cymbals at the right time, to hit that the apex of the music, who is that on ultimately?
Yeah.
The leader or the listener? In the same way with your crew, you should be taking responsibility for what's happening under your care. And you should be considering that your name is on the work of others as well. When you've been assigned to be their leader, when you've taken that responsibility, that means that your effort, attention, care, mentoring, all of those things need to reach the people who are under your care to the level at which you can say, yes, my name is effectively on the work of this person.
Man, that's awesome. The quote that I put down is effective training creates efficiency, and it's your job to provide that training. So we can refine that later, but that's the message I heard. Any application and challenges? We close that out.
Let's see. I'm trying to make sure I don't step on some of the future concepts here. But are you leading the crew to the level at which you would put your name on everything that they accomplish?
Wow. That's probably the quote right there. Yeah. I'll do that later. Anyway. All right. Well, so we're done with that segment. We have one more to finish up here and to get this book to where I can get all of the transcriptions done. And you can start your review over the holidays. Merry Christmas, Brandon. And this is awesome. So I'll just say thank you. And let's do 1, 2, 3. On we go.
Please join us next time in elevating the entire construction experience for workers, leaders, and companies coast to coast. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to share with your construction colleagues and help us spread the word by rating, subscribing, and leaving a review on your preferred podcast listening platform. We really appreciate it. We'll catch you next time on the Elevate Construction Podcast.